And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside, FD off. Bring in, FD off. Off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.
Grubbed twice and struck by lightning. It's the third time the charm for ViaSat-3. We'll find out in just under an hour's time. Welcome everybody to NSF's coverage of the second Falcon Heavy of the year, live from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Joining me on commentary for today's broadcast, you just heard him, Adrian Bio. How you doing, Adrian?
What is this footage?
Good idea.
Actually being shown. I worked that out myself. Let's get the rocket up on the screen. This is another launch that's coming up in the next couple of days. 5 baby bluebirds in the nest on my back porch, and I have cameras set up on them. But there is the Falcon Heavy. Ryan, take it away with Falcon Heavy.
Thanks, Daz. Yeah, I'll look next time. So yeah, joining me, we have Adrian Bio. We also have in the field, we have Max. How you doing, Max?
Well, actually, you don't have Max. Max is your camera operator today, and I am Julia Bergeron. I am here in the field at the KSC press site on this beautiful but kind of windy Sunday. Happy Groundhog Day.
Well, hello, Julia. So, not 3 times scrubbed, twice scrubbed because of weather. We had a bit of lightning. Julia, how is the weather looking from your position at the moment?
Well, what I can tell you is I don't see a single cloud in the sky. I see a gorgeous moon. I see a Falcon Heavy on the pad. There isn't even haze. What I do feel, though, is wind that is a bit better than what would have been at the beginning of the window. I say a bit better. I don't know what the upper level winds are, but I can tell you it's a lot better than watching lightning hit 39A.
So here's what the weather currently looks like. 26-ish degrees Celsius. Winds just over 15 miles an hour. So it's I'd say, what is that? A bit of a breeze, but nothing too substantial. And the sun's out, which is wonderful. You can see the as we approach sunset, you can see the more orangey hues touching LC-39A. The water tower lit up quite nicely. I'm going to hit this first from Musical Walls. Thank you very much. Regular name in chat. Would the winds be too much if it weren't for all 3 boosters are being expended? Adrian, what do we think about winds and the recovery and weather and stuff like that?
Well, I'm not sure if that would really be a concern, because usually that would also violate probably launch criteria. As of now, SpaceX is saying that the weather is 95% favorable for liftoff, now targeting for 8:26 local time. So it seems like with their slight shift to the end of the window, which they did here, they improved their situation and their chances of a liftoff today quite a bit. And yeah, as of now, I wouldn't, like, with a 95% liftoff chance, I don't worry about the weather right now. I might regret saying this down the stream, though. We'll see.
We'll hold you to account, Adrian. You can see there as well, Port Canaveral from Fleet Cam looking very nice this evening in Florida. Some birds flying around as well. And 3 of 9's become a Capcom member. Thanks very much for that. If you want to, you can join the Discord if that's something you're interested in. Excuse me. James here has a good question, asking why has booster 1053 only flown twice and not flown for 4 years? 1052 has a more typical 7 uses and last flew 8 months ago. So Adrian, why is 1053 not as experienced in flight as its sibling core 1052?
Ah, yes, that's because they probably never bothered converting it. So far, if I recall correctly, 53 was only used as a Falcon Heavy sidecore on the Arabsat-6A mission and the SDP-2 mission. They can convert boosters to from Falcon Heavy to Falcon 9, but it seems like they, yeah, with 53 they never bothered to use it as a Falcon 9 and to really bring it to up to speed. And also Alex in the back channel is saying it comes also down to interstage design here with the old interstage design. But yeah, it never happened here, and with Falcon Heavy being a bit on the more slippery side on the manifest, there was not that many Falcon Heavies flown compared to what we expected initially. That also means that the side boosters that were planned for these missions did not get that much of flying hours compared to what we would have expected. And yeah, now we arrive at the third flight for B1053, which sadly will also be its last.
Yeah, a triple core expended Falcon Heavy. I still think it might be a bit unfair to call it fully expended because the fairings are being recovered. But in fairness, the fairings don't exactly have to perform a propulsive landing, do they?
But that would be cool. Imagine a fairing performing a propulsive landing. I would watch that. But yeah, they don't have to. But still good that they at least want to try to recover the fairings, which still is quite some chunk of cost. If I remember correctly, we are still talking about like single-digit millions for the production of a fairing, if I recall earlier numbers correct. So yeah, still good that they're recovering these, but again, the ViaSat-3 mission needs the performance it can get and goes to a geostationary orbit, so they are not recovering anything in terms of boosters for this flight, which yeah, it's always sad to see because it's a reusable rocket. You want to see it being reused, but yeah, if the mission demands it, the mission demands it.
I have a fun fact about this fairing recovery, though.
Oh.
Oh, so SpaceX recovery ship Doug is almost 1,700 kilometers downrange. Get this, that is the farthest that a fairing recovery has ever happened, and that's by over 400 kilometers. So when we're talking about a rocket being yeeted, this one's being yeeted very far.
I wonder if that will maybe even influence the chances of this being a successful fairing recovery, because after all, the farther you yeet it, the more energy it also has that it has to dispose during re-entry. And yes, these fairings are kind of good with handling re-entry heat and re-entry energy, but after all, maybe that's still pushing the envelope here. It's still expanding what they did before. So we'll see if they even will successfully recover the fairings, or if this might need some tweaking. So we'll see.
Actually, speaking of tweaking, it's actually 1,960 kilometers. Gavin had updated that once they reached their final destination. So,
And
Wow,
in terms
that's-
of longitude, longitude, that's the side one. It's further off the coast than Bermuda is, which is just like insane to think about. It's a long sail for the fairing recovery ship. And yeah, I think that also just goes to show how much power you can get out of expending a Falcon Heavy. It's certainly not a weak rocket at all. It's formerly until last November, it was the world's most powerful operational rocket, which was then, of course, taken by SLS, and has now also, if you count it as operational, been doubly taken by Starship following the launch a week ago on Thursday. I should probably add. Julia, I'll throw this one to you. Joe asking, will we get a Falcon Nebula tonight, or is it too early before twilight?
Max is aggressively nodding his head yes. And I know last time I said 50-50, we had a lot of clouds with the way the beautiful sun is just setting right now, by the time we get up to nebula height, there should be enough sunlight in that upper atmosphere to make that expand and maybe do some jellyfishing.
Very exciting indeed. Cooper here has an interesting question. Do you ever think they'll attempt to land a center core again? So, Adrian, is center core recovery kind of being given up at this point? Because, of course, the maiden flight, they lost the center core, and also, if I remember correctly, a center core has been lost at sea before.
Yeah, so just to say, like, it's not like they're given up. It's just the missions they are flying right now are not really giving them the opportunity. That also comes down to the fact that Falcon 9 really improved so much over the years and took a lot of these missions that would be fully recoverable from Falcon Heavy to Falcon 9. So that's one of the reasons why we see these missions now. Falcon Heavy really got these high energetic orbit missions more and more, like missions that demand usually from the first stage to throw them quite a bit, so the second stage has to do less, and that often results in the center core not being reusable at all. So that's where we are right now. It's not clear if this will be forever, and if there might be a mission that maybe is a heavy payload to LEO, where it's more about getting the weight up, that could maybe allow for center core recovery. It's not out of the picture for the future. It's more that right now the missions are not aligning for a fully recoverable mission, because there's like a very small area of payloads where this could really be utilized. So we'll see, but yeah, right now it looks like we get a lot of side booster recoveries, but not a lot of center core recoveries.
Noah here has a good point or question asking what are the numbers of each of the three boosters. Adrian, what are the serial numbers of the boosters we were just talking about?
Yes, we have three boosters on this rocket, of course. It's triple core booster. We have B1052, which is one of the side boosters that flew 2, 4, 6, 7 missions before. And the other one, as we talked before, is B1053. That's the other side booster. And then in the center, we have the never been used B1068, which will debut on this flight and then also be thrown away. And that is logical in the sense we talked about, because there's no way to convert a Falcon Heavy center core to a Falcon 9. The side boosters can be, but the center cores cannot. And since there was never a reused Falcon Heavy center core, this has to be new.
It's the only way they can get around it, really. And you can kind of tell which booster is which because of how sooty they are. 52 is the one that's closest to the tower. So 7 flights, most sooty. Only a couple of flights, a little less sooty, but still got some soot on it. And then obviously the center core, sparkling white in the sun, because it's never been used before. It's never had to go through. It's never had to enter the Earth's atmosphere with the with the 3 Merlins under it, just pushing all of that kerosene soot up and then sticking to the side of the vehicle. Looking in here now, Brian asking, since Falcon Heavy is being maximized for performance, what other rockets would have been able to launch this mission? Well, it's a pretty beefy payload. We've got over 6.5 tons of payload. Julia, what other vehicles from the Cape do you think that would have been able to carry something like ViaSat-3 and the other 2 payloads?
I would say probably Delta 4 Heavy, another 3-core vehicle. Can't think of anything else. That would be it from Cape.
I mean, you could technically say SLS, but that would be a bit of an overkill to use SLS for ViaSat.
We only want to send it to geostationary. We don't want to send it to the moon.
I was going to say, let me say that. With some practicality, I'd say a Delta 4 Heavy.
Yes.
So, Adrian, speaking of mission mass and other vehicles and things along those lines, do you want to give us just a little overview in what we can expect today? What is this mission actually about?
Yeah, this is launching the ViaSat-3 satellite. It's a communication, like a geostationary satellite, which is actually one of the most interesting aspects about this and why it's needing so much energy, because it will be inserted directly to geostationary orbit. It's not going to a transfer orbit, it's going directly to geostationary, powered by Falcon Heavy. There's also two smaller payloads, the Arcturus and the G-Space-1 rideshare satellites, which will fly on this mission. It's right now targeting in 35 minutes from now, and as we said before, none of the 3 boosters for this mission will be reused. That's the overall mission overview. So far, this launch campaign has a bit of a, I wouldn't call it bad time, but it was a bit of a bumpy road, because initially the static fire was not returning the data they hoped for, which meant that this slipped for a few more days. And after that, we also had seen some scraps from launching this due to weather-related reasons. So far this launch campaign is a bit on a bumpy road, but we hope to see this stop today.
And everything's still continuing as normal, because I've heard that the RP1, the rocket propellant 1, the highly refined kerosene for the second stage, the upper stage, has now begun loading. So we're still on target for a launch in just under 35 minutes time.
We should also, Ryan, maybe point out here, since we also say it a lot of times for Falcon 9, but this right now has no wiggle room anymore. Falcon Heavy, just like Falcon 9, once they go into the countdown, once they go into the operating this rocket, they cannot wiggle anymore. They cannot abort or hold, and that's really a situation where we are right now here. They're targeting a specific second here. They cannot modify it anymore. They don't have enough window left to do a full recycle. So everything on this countdown that would mean a hold is instantly a scrub for today. That's just this reality with using these super dense propellants and like getting to very specific pressures and a very specific countdown. They're locked in. They're locked in to this specific moment right now.
I seem to recall that ViaSat-3 is one of the I don't know if we really have a term for it, but one of the payloads that many different Falcon Heavy missions have been getting pushed over the last year or so because of delays with the payloads, not necessarily problems with the... I seem to recall ViaSat-3 is one of those, because, funny story, Alex was telling me, because of the launch mount conversion, when I was originally intended to go see Psyche last year, that if I stuck around a little bit longer, I might have been able to see ViaSat-3 go at the same time, because it takes a while to get 39A prepped between Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9, but both of them obviously did not launch last year. One of them, fingers crossed, will be launching in just over half an hour's time, and the other one hopefully in October. Speaking of conversion, more about the boosters. Whitney is asking, what does it take to convert a standard Falcon 9 into a booster? And Adrian, I guess, also, what does it take to convert a sidecore into a normal Falcon 9?
Well, the first thing is to take off the nose cone and install an interstage, because these right now are equipped with nose cones. There are 2 nose cones on these side boosters. So one of the main steps is to take out the nose cone, put an interstage on it, but also you would remove the attachments to the center core, where they attach and grab to the center core, because that's how you really would fully change them. But also I think there's another point close to the engine section which will also be modified to fully convert them. Again, like they can do this with the side boosters, because technically the side boosters are kind of like, they are Falcon 9s. They are Falcon 9s in a specific configuration. The center core has a more specific design. It's more structurally enforced. It has very specific load points. It's a very different rocket, because it has to hold these 2 side boosters into place and basically give it structural stability. So there's a bit of a difference. The center core is different. The side boosters are basically Falcon 9s.
we've got a couple of super chats and the like here. Jacob's saying that they're on Wonder of the Seas. I think that's the cruise ship. Left the Cape a few hours ago. Ton of us really eager for the launch. Hopefully they can see it. Well, hopefully you do not cause a range violation. That would not be optimal for today's flight. Telstar is asking, why doesn't SpaceX clean the boosters after a flight? Doesn't the soot buildup affect the weight and aerodynamics? Julia, I know you're a fan of watching the boosters come back into port. Why did they not give them a little bit of a scrub?
Well, Elon has said that honestly that the impact from the soot really is quite minimal. What we have found that over time, though, as these boosters do get into the double digits, there is just a slight change to the flight profile. So eventually, this soot will make a difference, but really not enough to be noticeable. And the reason we don't clean the soot off is with that minimal impact, honestly, that would take far too much time and it would generate hazardous waste. The only way to really clean that is with, I believe it's isopropyl alcohol, and that's considered a hazardous waste, which would in turn actually drive up costs to be able to dispose of that. And I don't know about you, but I am not standing there wiping down a Falcon one isopropyl wipe at a time.
We also have Quiet Storm with $50. Thanks very much for that. That's a big contribution. Appreciated very much. All goes a long way in helping to keep things going, keep photons flowing, and bring you this coverage of launches such as Falcon Heavy. And Musical Wolves asking, will the side booster nose cones be recovered? Adrian, so fairings being recovered on the second stage. What about the nose cones on the boosters?
They're not. There's no mechanism to throw them out and let them just glide through the atmosphere. So, based on the profile we see right now and the fact how they manage it, the booster will hit the water quite hard, or to tell it like that. So there probably won't be anything to recover because they will not perform any like major slowdowns for this. So yeah, you basically, they might even already start to tear up in the atmosphere and start to break up there. And even if they survive that, next up would be the ocean where they slam into very without any breaking. So yeah, don't expect anything from these side boosters to survive that. There's a reason why they're not recovered. They are kind of already very far downrange, so they have a lot of energy that will be disposed there.
Got another jellyfish question in here from Andrew. I know some people have joined us in the last few moments before we went on air. Julia, I'll throw this one to you again. Will this be the first double jellyfish?
Well, now you're making me think really hard. I'm not sure if it'll be the first. I'm feeling like I have seen this before because we have. Oh yeah, no, Alex, I don't remember what launch it was. There was a lot of ooh and eyeing at the press site because the thrusters from the fairings were going. The first stage kept going. The second stage, like there was a boost back, and the second stage was going on, and all of this was happening at once. So it can't possibly be the first because there was an awful lot of ooh and eyeing. And Max is saying, yeah, he remembers that too. So
yeah,
it's happened before, but
we won't have a boost back burn today because we're not coming back. So there'll be no boost back. None of the only things coming back are the fairings, and they themselves will just glide. Not really. They'll just fall back into the Atlantic under their parafoils. So no.
But they'll still have those little thrusters.
They will, but
yeah.
They're a lot smaller than a Falcon 9 or the Falcon Heavy sidecar, though. But fingers crossed that the sun will still be able to light them up.
Hopefully. I don't know. They always seem more impressive for their size than you think they'll be.
Especially with the jellyfish effect, just makes everything look much more spectacular from our perspective here on the ground. Coming up shortly, we should see that T-22 minute vent, which will also verify that the propellant mode is still going as it should. there you go. That's the timeline for today's flight. Currently in the stage of RP1 load on the second stage, which began about 10 minutes ago. And so just under 8 minutes until the liquid oxygen load begins on stage 2. And then we get into pretty much the final minutes or so into the count from there. And that's the timeline for today's mission, all the way down until T0.
And also we can now very much see venting from the rocket very clearly as the boosters are getting filled, like the rocket getting filled. We see it becoming alive, which is always a great thing to see, I think. Once you really see that there's movement, there's things happening, that really means we have a rocket launch upcoming.
Yeah. Oh, that is. I wonder if the wind direction has changed a little bit, because you can. Yeah. Unless the venting has changed, which I don't think it has, because you can kind of see the venting appearing and then disappearing behind the strongback there. I guess when there's a gust of wind that kind of blows the boil off, and it becomes a lot more visible against the sky. Julia, has the sun set already? The orangeness has kind of dipped down a bit. It's kind of seems as if it's post sunset.
Well, yeah, the sun is below the horizon. Behind us, we have the golden glow. So you're starting to see more dusk colors at the pad, but there's definitely still a white gold glow behind us.
Mm-hmm. Ron asking here, why do we bother to paint the booster due to the weight of the paint? Adrian, there's a very famous vehicle that launched from the Cape, or two actually, maybe even three if you count Delta IV Heavy, that aren't painted because of the insulation. Why is Falcon 9 painted?
I actually don't know the full answer for that. I always assumed it has some sort of protective measures as well, and also SpaceX maybe decided it looks a bit cool, but they don't really bother with the painting that much after first flights. Like they look very white once they came out, and once they're done with the first flight, they're getting sooty, they're getting dirty. It's really not that they bother that much after initial flights. So I don't think it's something that SpaceX really has high on their agenda, as they are kind of known for just preferring to go with function over form. I think. Let's be real. Starship has, for example, also it's part of like there are attractive parts about Starship, but it's not like they really aim it for it being fancy and well polished. So yeah, it's not their main focus. They really want performance.
Mm-hmm. It also looks wonderful at the same time, and the moving of the SpaceX logo on the boosters from the bottom to kind of the middle, where the soot buildup is less because of I think it's because of the ice that forms around the outside. Also makes the boosters look a lot nicer. I still hold the opinion that a sooty booster looks prettier than a clean booster.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't know why, because it's kind of counterintuitive. The dirty booster, like if your car's really mucky, it should be more beautiful. But a dirty booster
There it is.
just. And there's the
There's
vent
that vent.
Everybody's favorite Falcon vent.
Is it? Are we? I like the close to liftoff vent as well. It's the really very getting close to action vent. I think this is my second favorite Falcon Heavy vent.
You know you've made it to the right channel when we're discussing what our favorite vents are.
I have very strong opinions about vents. Let this channel and a lot of discussions on this channel be my witness. I have strong opinions about different kind of vents.
And now that it's vented, I can give you my opinion on the whole painting thing. Yes, they moved the SpaceX logo basically because that's where it looks the best and takes the less damage from that re-entry or landing burn. And frankly, yes, I like boosters with character, and each and every booster is unique when we see it coming back into port. So I like dirty boosters.
Something I wish that the Falcon 9 boosters had, though, because I don't know if they'll do it with future Starships. I hope they do, but they put S-24 on the ship. You could see it. The serial numbers on the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy boosters are really small and quite difficult to see unless you don't know where to look. Something I would like is if they could just put the numbers a bit bigger on the sides, and you could be like, oh, that's number 52, that's number 53. If I was in charge of liverying the Falcon boosters, that would be my first course of action, to make the numbers bigger, but also not to make the livery ugly.
Those numbers aren't for our benefit, though. I hate to tell you. Those numbers are
But
just for,
they should be.
I think
I
you
want
want
to
it
see the
more.
numbers.
You want it more like NASCAR. Gotcha.
Yeah. I want it big on the side, and then a fancy font as well with like glowy thing. Can we put sponsors on? Okay, that's a bit far now. Just heard that the RP1 guide for the second stage, swiftly moving on, has now completed. So next up is the liquid oxygen, which starts loading at T-minus 18 minutes and 30 seconds, as you could see on the timeline. Sam asking, how much mass does Falcon Heavy save from not putting recovery equipment on? So, Adrian, that would be grid fins and the landing legs. Is there anything else that they need to recover a booster?
No, it's grid fins and the legs, and also probably technically. So there's also T-tap, which is less stored then because they don't need that much for ignitions because there's less ignitions. So that's also part of it. I would enter very much a lot of guesswork here. Just giving you some numbers. I could put out some numbers here, but I don't feel qualified to do that, and so I don't want to. I want to point out that the most likely reason for them removing recovery hardware is actually not. I don't think the main goal is weight saving, because especially these titanium grid fins tend to be very light, which is one purpose of titanium. And I think overall it's more because they're expensive. Especially these grid fins are very expensive parts, so they take them off to not dump them into the ocean. That's the goal here, to get them basically for missions where they need them and do not waste the very precious titanium.
Mm-hmm. Am I correct in saying they're like the biggest single forged piece of titanium, or has that record been taken by someone else? I remember hearing that at some point. I don't know if it's correct or not.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?
Is it true that these were or are the largest single, what's the word, like milled or like cut pieces of titanium?
I heard that story as well, but I think it was never like verified, or like there's a world record for it, so I'm not sure if that is true. I heard that the saying as well. I think SpaceX itself claimed it. So there's always the question, like, did they do their homework and completely verify it's definitely true? Because I think, again, like I wouldn't put my hand into a fire here to 100% guarantee there's no bigger part in the world.
Mm-hmm. You can see there the LOX load has begun on the second stage, so still progressing towards a launch in just over 17 minutes time from LC-39A in Florida. A question here from Lucas about the cost of a fully expendable Falcon Heavy. Adrian, do we have any numbers from SpaceX, or would the only way of being able to find that out be ask or try and put a payload on Falcon Heavy?
There are numbers flying around. It's always has been a bit of changing, and there's a bit of going up. I think the last price for expendable that was put out was like in the ballpark of 150 million for fully expendable. But of course, that's not the cost. That's the price, and that's always the situation. Do you want to look at how much SpaceX needs in money to build it, or do you want to know how much customer pay for it? And that's always the discussion here to have. But I think it was in the ballpark of 150 million in the cost for expendable. But I think these numbers are a bit older, and SpaceX tends to not fully disclose these numbers all the time. but yeah, reusable is a ballpark of about 100 million, and expendable about 150.
There's a really good question here from Diamond User. And whilst Adrian's been answering that question, I've just looked up the numbers. So, to my calculations, so I got the wrong question here. Oops. We'll answer this one though, asking why does Falcon Heavy look half burnt? Julia, why does Falcon Heavy look half burnt? And I'll get to the question I was talking about in a bit.
Not burnt. It's just patchwork. Well, it looks like that because booster 1052, this will be its 8th flight. Booster 1053, this will be its 3rd flight. And then you have in the middle a very brand new center core. So it's not burnt. It's just sooty. It's okay. They still fly.
You could even.
And
I wondered, like, I think there was a topic that Dr. Zubuchen at some point on Twitter made up. Like, you can always start to argue: would you even say that a center core or a side booster that has flown is less safe or less likely? Because there is a point at some point with more and more flights on these boosters where you could say, like, isn't like a second or third flight safer than a first flight, because it's already proven hardware. It's already something that went through a complete cycle and worked. So I think there's an argument to be made that if you have a very high expensive mission, you could always almost switch to a situation where you want to be on the second or third flight of hardware and not on the first. I think that's a legit discussion to have.
The question I was talking about was from Chungo Monko asking how many boosters are currently in circulation. I did do the numbers, and not Adrian, Alex has also given me some more data in the back channel, so I'll run through this really quickly. I think there are currently 20 boosters in circulation. 2 of them have reached 15 flights, so SpaceX needs to do like a deep refurbishment of them. And then there's an additional 3 that are currently being tested, so that's things like static fires at McGregor, etc., which you can watch on McGregor Live. So the actual numbers, if you want to know them: 52, 53, 58, 60, 62, 64, 65, 67, 68, 69, 73, 76, 77, and 78 are currently in use in Florida. 61, 63, 71, and 75 are all in Vandenberg. 72, 74, and 80 are yet to fly, but they will be flying from Florida. And 79 is currently on its way to McGregor, I'm being told. It's a Falcon Heavy center core. So there you go. If you lost me, rewrite the stream, figure out what all the different Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy boosters are currently up to. And of course, when B1079 makes its way to McGregor, you can watch it go through its testing process on McGregor Live, our 24/7 live stream of all things McGregor. Mr. Vipitis, sorry if I got that wrong, asking how far away are the Falcon Heavy upgrades? Bigger fairing, vertical integration, Dragon XL. Julia, I certainly think from like a photography perspective, having a vertical integration like facility, I don't know, are you expecting something similar to the rotating service structure used on Shuttle? Will that get in the way of your pretty photos?
Yeah, that probably would get in the way of pretty photos. I guess now I've become so accustomed to there not being a rotating service structure here. But you know what? Any photo of a rocket is pretty, and once it clears the pad, that wouldn't be an issue anyway. So there you go. I do like ground systems, and they have a story to tell as well.
I also guess that with a bigger fairing, it would give you more rocket to take photos of in terms of surface area. So that'll probably make up for a vertical integration. Adrian, Adrian, have we heard anything on Dragon XL? I don't think we have for a little while at least.
No, it doesn't seem like it's a high topic right now. SpaceX, of course, has loads of projects, especially together with NASA. And right now, it doesn't seem like Dragon XL is like the front-runner project they're working on right now. So I expect once really we get into a situation where the gateway gets really going and they're talking about the future of that, I think that's the situation where they really want to also talk about that in a more detailed way.
Gonna hit a few more super chats and the like here. As you can see, the purples, the pinks, and the deep blues really starting to show in the sky. Dr. R. Martin saying, I'm 70 years old and I was present for the launch of Echo 1 in 1960. Quite a difference. Yes, Falcon Heavy is a bit a bit of a different beast, but certainly all launches are fun launches. We also have 5 gifted Red Team memberships here. Thanks very much for that. If you receive one of them, make sure to thank Methane Man in chat. Infinity with £10. Good evening from the southwest UK. I mean, technically over here it's already like 1 o'clock in the morning. So good morning. And another one here, £2. Thanks for your awesome coverage. You're very welcome. And also gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much. Of course, if you received one of them, make sure to thank them in chat. ARP asking how much extra mass does the soot from previous launches add? We answered that a couple minutes ago, so fingers crossed you're around to see that there. Short answer is it's negligible. We don't really have to worry about it for the number of flights which the boosters do. John's saying send it. Hopefully they do. I want them to send it. Something you can also do if you're looking forward to Falcon Heavy sending it is get a bit of merch with Falcon Heavy on it. Our heavy collection of different items allows you to express your enthusiasm for the former world's most powerful operational rocket as of last November actually. If this being released in celebration of the return to flight of Falcon Heavy, which was USSF 44, a very fogged over launch unfortunately, but there you go, big heavy rocket, heavy. The E spelled out with the 3 calls and the fairing is the bit of the A. There's probably a technical term for that, which I don't know. Sorry if I'm upsetting any people who are professionals in typography. But there you go. The bit of the E and the bit of the A is what Falcon Heavy makes up. You can also get it on a mug, or if you want a pretty picture of Falcon Heavy, we've also got them available in metal print form. All available shop.nasaspaceflight.com. This one here, you can see a big plume. You've also got some other wonderful photos, all available shop.nasaspaceflight.com to hopefully suit all of your Falcon Heavy needs. Of course, we have other items on the shop, but as this is a Falcon Heavy launch, that's kind of the bit of the shop which specializes in this vehicle, which is currently on track to launch in just over 8 minutes time. John asking here, why don't they use a booster that's been used many times as a center core by taking the legs off? Julia, why can't we use a normal Falcon 9 booster as a Falcon Heavy center core?
The reason we cannot do that is just because the Falcon Heavy center core is basically a unique rocket design. As Alex was saying earlier in the broadcast, it is structurally different to support the 2 side boosters. So unfortunately, there is no way to give a Valhalla goodbye to any of the older boosters by converting it. But we can convert them into those side boosters and give them, in this case, a nice watery salute goodbye.
Speaking of that center core, the RP1 load in that booster itself is now completed. A fact we've just got from SpaceX is that this is the 100th flight of used fairing halves, so really striving to reuse the Falcon family as much as possible. The boosters are I'm not going to say easy to return, because propulsively landing a booster traveling that quickly and hitting a target, very difficult to do. A big accomplishment for reusability, but they can get them back. Fairing halves, they can get them back. The second stage, it would not, in terms of mass to orbit, it would not be worth it. So really, SpaceX is striving for reusability, reusing Falcon as much as it can, heading towards Starship, which will be fully reusable.
You know what?
Go on, Julia.
I just thought of a way that I can make Gavin cry. Without us sacrificing the lovely nets of ships like Mr. Steven, we probably wouldn't have achieved this 100th flight of a fairing half. Just because, although that was a very cool way to try and catch fairing halves, they did learn that it was just as effective to pluck them out of the water and wash them off. So salute to the fleet for making these recoveries more reliable.
And we've also just got words that the side boosters have got their RP1 fully loaded. B1053 the first to do so, and then B1052, its sibling booster, just a short while after. I think
and we also have engine chill.
Engine chill, very
yes,
exciting.
we are in engine chill. The 27 engines below us are getting now preconditioned for cryogenic fluids to flow through them ahead of liftoff. So yeah, it's really we are in the very final stages of the count, and actually the next major milestone will be at 1 minute, where the flight computer commands to begin final pre-launch checks, and the rocket takes over the countdown. Basically, from there on out, it's all Falcon Heavy controlling the countdown. So kind of exciting. We are in the final steps.
Mm-hmm. Just want to quickly thank this super chat here. No message, but your contribution is very well appreciated. Everything we get, even if you're just watching, sharing it, it's all greatly appreciated. It goes a long way, and we're so grateful for you deciding to tune in and watch us talk about rockets for an hour, and then fingers crossed C1 launch. Aaron asking here, with SpaceX acquiring Slick 6 at Vandenberg, do we think we'll see a Falcon Heavy from California? Adrian, have we got any whispers about a Falcon Heavy from California?
I mean, initially it was already planned, if I recall correctly. But yes, I think that's basically the plan down the line, to have both options there. And it also really shows to you, like, there might be some juice into the future of Falcons here down the line. It's not all over yet with when people are saying, like, oh, how long will they fly the Falcons before Starship takes over? Well, it might take a while. There's still some life and some juice left in the Falcon fleet, and I think they will fly for many years to come, probably like 10 years or so. I wouldn't be surprised to see like Falcon 9s and Falcon Heavy still fly in the 2030s.
I suspect, in my personal opinion, that some government contracts, like from the Department of Defense, National Reconnaissance Office, etc., for launching their secret payloads, I think Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9 will stick around for those, at least, because contracts that take a while to go through, etc., may not want to risk it on a new vehicle like Starship. And as Adrian was answering that question, actually, the strongback had started to peel back. There it goes now, starting to fall back slightly. It's not the complete fall back we'll see at liftoff, but it's just a couple degrees back to give the vehicle a little bit more breathing room as it gets ready for launch in just over 3 minutes' time. Both the side cores have had their liquid oxygen fully loaded at this point now, still on track for that launch. Very exciting. Fingers crossed we're still go by the time the clock hits 0. The center core has also now just finished loading its liquid oxygen. Whilst we've got this angle from SpaceX, looking at the top, the fairing halves are a little bit different color. Julia, quickly, do we know why the tips on the fairings are a different color, or is that not really something we know?
Well, you're talking about the very tippy top of them?
Yeah.
That's a different color because I do believe that's a piece of reinforced metal that I think helps when it's re-entering and landing in the ocean, just to kind of give it a little bit more reinforcement.
Sounds good. And fun fact, everybody, this is the first Falcon Heavy flying with used fairing halves. So there you go. Reinforced tippity top of the fairing halves, and they're being reused for ViaSat-3 and the other two ride shares. Go on, Adrian.
One quick thing I want to point out why the second stage is gray, because you can see the second stage also being gray. That is a special thermal protection layer to... And oh, there's the 2-minute vent. There we go. That's the final and my favorite Falcon Heavy vent. There we go. Yeah, the gray on the second stage is to protect the and basically keep the thermals correct in the for long coasting phase. Since this is directly going to geo, there will be a burn very much late in the timeline here. To be precise, the last burn of this will be SES will be after 4 hours and 22 minutes once it all the way coasts up to GTO area and then fully inserts it to GEO. So it needs to protect these propellants for a long time and keep them conditions, and that's why the gray interstage is there.
Coming up now on
stage.
Coming up now on T-minus 59 seconds. There we go. The flight computer should now be commanded to perform the final pre-flight checkouts. In about 10 seconds time, we'll get the flight director verifying if we're go or not. Fingers crossed we are. We should be hearing that in a couple seconds time. As we approach T0, the propellants will be pressurized. The engine controller will then ignite the engines using TTEB, and the launch director now verifying we are go for launch. Here we go. Getting ready. 30 seconds time. And then, of course, at T-minus 0, liftoff, fingers crossed, should be occurring with all 27 Merlins underneath each of the 3 cores. Approaching T-minus 20 seconds now. This is when the pressurization starts to kick in for the tanks. As we count down now into the final 10 seconds of the count. Here we go. 10. 5 seconds. There we go. We've got ignition. And liftoff. We have liftoff of the first fully expended Falcon Heavy carrying ViaSat-3 to geostationary orbit. We're clear the tower. Let's listen in for the rumble of those 27 Merlins. You can hear the car alarms in the background going off. We're past 60 seconds into flight now. The rumble of those 27 Merlins continuing as this fully expendable vehicle is heading up into space. Past max Q, the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will be feeling, or experiencing rather. You can see the vapor now starting to come off of the vehicle, and as it heads up to geostationary orbit.
And we have about 90 more seconds to go here before we have BECO or booster engine cutoff, which will be the moment where these side boosters leave the center core alone and prepare for impacting the ocean.
Falcon Heavy now just becoming a little less easy to hear as it heads down range. You can see the plume expanding quite considerably that now because of the lower density in the upper parts of the atmosphere. The flame coming out the bottom of the engine, at the bottom of the vehicle, isn't being pushed in as much. So you can really see it now start to expand out as it heads up in altitude.
Is that max tracking?
I think it might be. This definitely isn't. This is SpaceX's track, but just really a proper fiery red colour coming out the bottom of Falcon Heavy with a little bit of green in there too. As we're heading up into orbit. BECO up next, coming up shortly. Both of the look at this, absolutely beautiful, absolutely incredible views here. BECO up shortly. The side cores will shut down and then separate from the center core, which itself will continue up into space before dropping off the second stage.
Are we enjoying the color there?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yes.
Look at this.
Look at that.
Fiery red mixed with some light greens as well as BECO is now upon us and the boosters are separating off of the side core.
Yeah, you're going to get quite a show. There's still some golden sunlight right behind me.
Look at this guy.
And
absolutely
there comes
incredible.
BECO.
You can really start to see the jellyfish starting to form there with the sunlight bouncing off the top of shining through the upper atmosphere because it's set on the ground, but because of the increase in altitude, it's yet to set, technically, I guess, at the location which Falcon Heavy currently is. I mean, just look at that. The trail really, really visible there from Falcon Heavy. Just absolutely incredible. The sunset colours shining through the plume of where the vehicle has been, and then the deep, dark blue sky behind it.
Oh, you guys! Whoa! I don't know if video can do that justice, you all. The full plume is going from a light
wow.
blue to a pink to an orange to a yellow and then a shining white.
You can see
Look
on
at
the
the
left
left
there
view.
that, yeah, the plume, the expansion of, you can see kind of 9 legs coming out the bottom. Those are from each of the engines. Just looks incredible. And it's stopped.
And I think, yeah, we now have MECO, main engine cutoff. So the next thing we should see is the startup of the second stage engine, which we can see here, the MVAC
Whoa,
engine.
look at that. You can see the sun on the horizon. That is beautiful.
Wow. This launch is delivering on visuals.
There you go. I think it might be in close competition with USSF 67, whether it's the most beautiful Falcon Heavy launch later. I guess we'll have to do a poll of that in a few days' time. Once we've been able to let the launch sink in. Next up is the fairings. They'll be popping off and being recovered. The only pieces of this launch being recovered, and then that will unveil the 3 payloads, the 6.5-ton ViaSat-3 and its ride shares to the very, very, very thin parts of the atmosphere, at least compared to on the ground, as the second stage reaches over 18,000 kilometers in, not 18,000 kilometers, 18,000 kilometers per hour in velocity, 138 kilometers in altitude. And just look at that. I think, it's that bright dot on the top of the screen, the second stage? I'm trying to look carefully.
Oh, wow, that looks just beautiful. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, you can see the plume of the 3 center cores still kind of lingering in the sunset there. The sun now obscured behind the Earth with the onboard views from the second stage. And you can see here.
Yeah. And just to point out what's happening right now. Right now, this first burn will bring bring it into a stable orbit, and then the second burn, SES2, at 29 minutes and 42 seconds, will basically bring the second stage on a trajectory to GTO, and then will fill it to a full geostationary orbit after 4 hours and 4 hours and 22 minutes. Sorry. And then the satellite is planned to be deployed after 4 hours and 32 minutes from now. So really a long mission here that SpaceX has to perform.
Yeah, this is certainly not one for the teams at SpaceX to just, oh, we've launched it, time to go to bed. Definitely not one of them. It's a long endurance time for the teams in mission control and also the satellite customers who are on board. Second stage Merlin 1D vacuum still burning bright. Because there's no sun to overcompensate the camera. You can see now as the very, very thin blue line of atmosphere is still visible. And that will be getting even less visible as the second stage flies around the dark side of the planet. Over 7 minutes into flight now, still coming up on SECO 1. The first cutoff of the second stage. That'll come once it's reached its parking orbit, they call it. So we're in a parking orbit. And then
you can see the orbit slowly forming and expanding. You can really see how it slowly but surely goes longer and longer here. And I bet there are some SpaceX engineers here who are really happy that this thing finally took off. Because this Falcon Heavy really didn't want it to launch.
No, it's been lingering on 39A for a short while now. Not only has the ViaSat payload been a little bit of a delay on the actual launch date, but also the weather not complying in Florida. I'm sure they'll be happy to just get this off the ground.
Yeah, and
8
also
minutes into flight.
With the ambitious timeline for this year and like the ambitious goal that Elon Musk has set previously for about 100 launches, having a rocket on the pad for a week or even 2, that's kind of like blocking a blank view. And there we have SECO 1.
And there we go. NASA's favourite view on launch day, an empty launch pad. I was actually looking at the screen this time. You can see the transport erector, the strongback, has retracted to 45 degrees. And 39A is now vacated for the next flight to be rolled out to that pad, integrated, and then launched, because that's the rapid cadence SpaceX is treating us all to nowadays. You can still see some venting coming off there as well. Thanks, Das. Thanks.
Thanks for the shout out there. Good job.
I feel like at this point we need like an own like banner for it, like Das favorite shot, like a at the bottom a ticker.
Approved.
Yeah.
Nice. Looking forward to have that soon.
You can still see the kind of orangey purpley colours here from Fleet Cam, which is looking a little bit more to the west. Well, it's looking north technically, but it means you can also see to the west. We've been looking to the east for the vast majority of the time until we had the onboards of the second stage. During the launch, we had John gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thanks very much for that, John. If you received one of them, make sure to thank John in chat. And there we go. I think that's a helicopter or something flying in the background there. This is the current view from the second stage, which is in its parking orbit, going 26,500 kilometers an hour at 164 kilometers in altitude. There you can see the visualization. Yeah. And there you go. The empty launch pad. Falcon Heavy is departed. Adrian, do we know when the next Falcon Heavy will be?
That's a very good question, because we all, let's be real, we all want to see more Falcon Heavy. Right now, that would be probably the USSF-52 mission, which is lingering around July-ish. That's like the plan right now. We also have Eckerstaff 24, which would be planned in about August. Sorry, my German coming through there for a moment. And we also, of course, have Psyche, right now planning in October. And remember, Psyche has a specific window it has to hit, so there's not really much wiggle room there. So Psyche might, like, there's a pretty high chance we will at least see 1 or 2 more Falcon Heavies this year coming up, because Psyche really has to go.
Yeah, Psyche better not move again. I don't have to deal with rebooking flights. Julia, you were down there. What did that look like from your perspective? It looked pretty incredible from the cameras, but of course nothing beats actually seeing it in person.
Oh, it was, oh gosh, it was beautiful. Now, if you want to compare that to 67, they are beautiful in different ways. This one was definitely more colorful. 67, that was more full of action. So, could I tell you I have a favorite yet? Nope, I can't tell you. I'm leaning towards 67, but the beauty of this one, did you guys hear that, by the way? That was so loud.
Yeah, it sounded like very deep. Like I love always the sound of Falcons, because Falcons I feel like have this very like deep, almost like, I don't know. It's hard to describe as a sound, but I really like it as a sound.
I say a deep. You feel it in your chest, because you do feel it in your chest from the distance we are at. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a little like a chain of sonic booms, almost like a lot of chains of very loud sounds.
Got a couple more questions in here, which we'll hit for the moment. Jim Laz asking, is this the heaviest load ever on a Falcon Heavy? Adrian, I'll throw this one to you. Is this the most massive payload we've ever had?
I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I want to verify which is. So let me quickly verify what. But I think the quick answer is pretty much no, because I think the most the situation here was more that it was complicated because of the orbit and not of the weight. The problem is I think we have some USSF satellites as well, which are not fully disclosed and like the mass, but I'm also waiting on Alex maybe to weigh in on this. But I think it's hard to say with USSF 67 and 44 if this was the heaviest.
I think Yeah, I think you're certainly going to get the A star for effort in filling for time there, Adrian, for this year. That's the award that's going to be going
Yeah,
to you.
thank you. I'm very good at talking very emptively while looking up for answers. That's also a commentator talent you pick up at some point. You're like, okay, I really need to look this up because not every number ever used in spaceflight is actually in our head. I wish we had that every number in our head, but
No,
I
don't tell everyone. That's our secret. That's what they were meant to believe. Adrian.
Oh, that's like, but once they talk with you in real life, they're like, oh wait, this person does not have every number. There's actually quite a lot of numbers you suddenly sometimes have in your head. Sometimes it's scary what you have in your head in terms of, oh, I know the statistic.
I'll throw it to another question then. There's another one here about payload weight. We've established we're not too sure on what the heaviest is yet so far. Space Wolf asking, because the center core is expendable, is it not as well constructed? Enough for a launch, obviously, but not as well built as a side core or a Falcon 9. Julia, is there any change in construction because it's expended, or is it just not put, or does it just not have grid fins and landing legs and such installed on the side?
No change in construction. It's just missing a few items that we would normally find key to launch day. That's all.
Very interesting indeed. Skyrock's asking, is Falcon Heavy still planning to launch Gateway in late 2024? Adrian, we mentioned earlier we don't have any news on Dragon XL, which is currently kind of the commercial resupply cargo for Gateway. But do we know about the space station itself?
Well, it is still planned. The Gateway PPE and Halo are still planned for right now, net December 2025 on a Falcon Heavy. Yes. So that's really part of this very high-profile manifest that SpaceX has started to build with Falcon Heavy, because at the beginning it was more like slowly assembling mission, but now you have very high-profile missions actually flying on it. Not only with Gateway PPE and Halo, but also Astrobatics Lunar Mission 3, and last but not least, the Roman Space Telescope, which is planned to launch on Falcon Heavy net October 2026. So there's really like a lot of high-profile missions coming on this rocket, which is quite exciting. I think this is I would call this a previously, or you would see this manifest on some other rocket companies, and now it really moved like this high-profile AAA missions to Falcon Heavy, which I think makes a lot of people at SpaceX very happy to see these signature missions on their rocket.
Yeah, I'd certainly, throughout the 2010s and such, you'd see the big kind of, I don't know if NASA has a proper name for them, but I'd say like A-class, big premier missions being launched on like Delta IV Heavy, Atlas V from ULA, and things like that. More vehicles that have a lot more flight history within like the US Air Force and such from the 60s that have developed over time into what they've become today, which of course both are now going to get replaced with Vulcan. Fingers crossed the first flight of that will be coming this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you would read the manifest of Falcon Heavy to somebody in the year 2010, they would say, "Oh, cool! What ULA is launching now." I actually think that without throwing any shade to ULA, but like it's a very typical manifest that you would connect to a company like ULA, and I think it's a testament to SpaceX developing Falcon Heavy that they managed to pick up such a high-profile manifest.
Mm-hmm. Dan asking, they expended the boosters at 164 kilometers, 26,000 kilometers per hour. How does this compare to when they recover the boosters? Adrian, I don't know if you have the numbers in your head or if we can get them in the back channel about the recovery of the boosters, but obviously they don't deplete themselves in terms of fuel because they need the fuel to come back, don't they?
Yeah, they have fuel left for 2 to 3 burns. Basically, there's the boost back burn, which doesn't have to happen. You also have the entry burn, which happens all the time, and the landing burn. So the cheeky answer here to give is like the speed compared to landed booster is landed booster stop at 0. However, you can now answer very cheekily, well, an expanded booster also at some point reaches 0. So there's a bit of a... I'm having an internal debate with myself here right now.
Mm-hmm. So the way we kind of have to answer this question is the second stage is at the same point it would be at if this wasn't a expended mission, but the second stage will now have more propellant and therefore more delta V, delta velocity, because more of the grunt to get it to that parking orbit was used by the center core and the side cores, because the side cores and the center core aren't being reused. So essentially, a bigger portion of that initial ride up into orbit has now been used up by the first stages and not by the second stage, giving the second stage more potential to do more stuff. Now it is in that parking orbit. So whatever the values are for that equation, which I just managed to make up out of thin air, that is the answer to your question.
It's actually
sorry.
I can really recommend experiencing a bit with this in Kerbal. I really think that's a good way to understand how this works in terms of how much energy you have on the first or second stage, because there's cool mods and cool plugins to develop reusable rockets in Kerbal where you propulsively land them. And the main thing I had to understand when I started doing that in my private save, because I was just interested to doing it, is like there's a very sweet spot for a certain mission where to cut off the first stage and use my second stage. And it's a really interesting thing to move around left to right and right to left, because you really get a feeling what is really the goal here. And I think it was a very, very fun experiment to do, and I can really highly recommend if you're ever interested in reusability and KSP. With a lot of mods, it's a lot of fun to reuse rockets there.
A question here from Kyla asking, is it possible that SpaceX uses older Merlins on other boosters for expendable missions like this? Julia, do we have any idea on if older Merlins are put on or engines are swapped around boosters? Because at least from looking on like at the port and from the public side, it just kind of seems like they pick up the booster off the drone ship, put it on their transporter, and then just take it to the hangar for a bit of a cleanup and a refurb.
You are actually very correct about that. So essentially, the Merlins that are on the booster stay with the booster unless during refurb or data recovered from the previous launch says that a Merlin maybe needs to be swapped out. And in all honesty, the only time we can kind of tell maybe when a Merlin was swapped out is if they take a booster and they static fire it when we don't normally expect a static fire. So yeah, like you said, they pretty much come with the package. They stay with the booster, and if need be, they can swap them out easy enough, but they don't swap them amongst each other as far as I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Good luck here for some more questions. If you have a question and you want us to try and answer it to the best of our abilities with our crude equations like the one I just came up with, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight, and we'll give it a go. James asking, due to the high acceleration, was max Q significantly more intense than a less powerful launch, i.e. a launch that wasn't fully expended? Adrian, do you think max Q would have been more intense, or does it change depending on velocity? How does max Q work? Tell me everything about aerodynamics.
Oh yeah, the totally easy topic to answer, because aerodynamics is such an easy and well...
one sentence, go.
Yeah, just one sentence, but no. Well, I don't think the acceleration is necessarily like bigger here. It's more like the boosters burn longer and take more of the second stage up from like the duration of their burn, as we talked about before. The second stage burn was shorter because the first stage burned longer. So I do not think, based on the fact that max Q is a very you don't want to modify and play around a lot with your max Q usually. So I think the profile up to max Q and beyond, it would be pretty much the same. The question is just where the first stage cuts off, and where the boosters cuts off, and where the center core cuts off. But I don't think it has any to do with the acceleration. They just accelerate longer, which still gives you more acceleration, but not by... There's a certain limit how much you can throttle a Merlin up, and they won't... They usually reach that a lot of times during flight.
Mm-hmm. Alex telling us in the back channel that the second stage fired for about 4 minutes on this flight, which is the shortest orbital insertion burn ever for a Falcon second stage, less than 4 actually. And then I hate to say this, but your bog standard Starlink, I mean, it's incredible that it's become bog standard now, but that's kind of essentially what they've become. It's about 6 minutes to get a set of Starlinks up into its parking orbit, depending on whatever shell it's being sent to and what type of, if it's V1.5, V2. Numbers change roughly on average 6 minutes ish. So you can see it's a big reduction in second stage burn time, which just goes to show the amount of grunt put in by the first stage is much more, because they don't need to, they can spend the fuel on getting the payload into a parking orbit rather than having to spend the fuel on a boost back burn and an entry burn and then a landing burn on a landing zone or a drone ship. So it's just a matter of using your fuel for different purposes. If you use your fuel to get your payload into orbit, your second stage has to do less work. If you use your fuel to bring the first stage back, your second stage has to do more work. It's a where do you want to use your fuel is essentially what that equation is, to work out that number.
Ooh. By the way, we got some numbers from Danny here in our back channel. USSF-67 had BCO at about 6,000 kilometers an hour and MECO at 10,000 kilometers an hour. For this flight, BCO was at 14.5 thousand kilometers an hour and MECO at 17,000 kilometers an hour. So way more energy there being provided by the first stage here. That's quite impressive. Yeah.
So literally the end point of that flight was spent all the way up to the end, getting as much velocity as possible, and that's pretty much, it's over a doubling in terms of BCO end cutoff velocity, and just under double MECO velocity. So there you go. I'd say pretty much on average about twice as fast at the point of booster engine cutoff and main engine cutoff. Let's have a look in here for a few more questions.
Sorry, I just saw this. This is one of my favorite metal prints in the store, and I love it.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's like this very special design. It's a very white, and I think it's one of the best prints we have in the store. So I always when we see that, I'm very happy to see it because it's a very, very cool design. And somebody's shopping metal prints here. Good choice. Good choice. Thank you.
I think we've got them. We've got a couple in here from Andrew buying off the store. Thanks very much for that, Andrew. Good again, a Starship metal print. I think is that photo from Jack? I'm not too sure. I'd have to look on the store to see. I think that's roughly from where the angle where Jack was standing, or if it's remote maybe. And of course the Starship orbital flight test sticker, the patch design, and ARP asking how much extra mass does the soot from the previous flights add? I know you asked this earlier. We did kind of answer it at the same time, but many more people may have joined by now. So Julia, I'll throw this one to you again. Does soot on the booster impact the mass, aerodynamics, anything like that?
No. It is very minimal. If it does impact it, it's not until that booster has flown well into the double digits, and all they need to do is make a slight change to it's been a long day, to the flight profile, and it's good to go. So it's so subtle though that we wouldn't really catch it. So short answer is nope. Leave the sooty booster alone. Let it be unique. It's lovely just the way it is, and a lot less work to turn them around.
Mm-hmm. You need a pretty big pressure washer in order to scrub that whole thing down. And I can say the scrub word now because it's launched. So I know Alex is about to moan at me for using the S word, but it's launched, so it doesn't matter anymore. SES2.
No, he actually mentioned that we just mentioned we just saw engine shows starting. But SpaceX is no longer showing it.
Yeah. There we go.
No, there we go. That's engine chill. They're chilling the MVAC engine in preparation for ignition because they still need to chill it. It's not something they only do once. They still need to do it again now for reignition.
Just in case it's warmed up at all in the, in this case on the dark side of the planet over Africa, just passing over Gabon, I think. Testing my African geography yet again. But it'll be exiting the African continent over Madagascar. There you go, views of the Merlin 1D vacuum again on the second stage.
1 minute until SES2, which is the second startup of the Merlin vac, which will then bring it to the half geo, basically. That would be where you went to for a GTO, and it will once again burn then once it reached that point to make it a full geo.
Mile has a good question here, asking, I'll rephrase this to, are the cameras live during expended booster plummet? Will SpaceX share those views? I'd love to see the terminal velocity views. Adrian, if they're expending, I don't think that's really shared with us. I imagine they'll keep all that data up until the final point where they lose contact, but I don't really think they'll want to share that with the public.
Yeah, there might be a situation where they don't want to show like all the parts flying around, because that could easily be something they don't want to show. That's at least how I imagine it. Also, I would imagine like once it starts to break up, it probably loses contact pretty quickly, because once you start seeing like once parts start to leave the booster, that's usually where it reaches its limit and it will just fly around. And there we have it, SES2, the second stage igniting again for 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
You can really see the nozzle glowing now as we are half an hour after launch from Launch Complex 39A in Florida. So after this, looking at the timeline here, the second engine cutoff will occur. Second stage engine cutoff will occur, rather. And then it's a bit of a coaster. It's roughly a 4-hour coaster until second engine start 3. And then that lasts for a minute or so until that cuts off again. And then about 10 minutes after SECO 3, the primary payload for this mission, the 6.5-ton ViaSat-3 Americas, will deploy. And then after that, the 2 ride shares, Gravity Space's GS1 will then deploy, and Astronis's micro geo satellite will deploy a few minutes after that. Those roughly about 6 minutes separated from one another. There you go. They've lost signal. The second stage will, of course, keep going. That is, of course, expected. And there you go. Empty launch pad. Falcon Heavy's departed. I'm just going to thank everyone who's been involved in this broadcast. At the top of the list here, we have Adrian. Thanks for coming on, Adrian.
Thanks for having me. And as always, I will make sure to thank our chat moderators who stick around with us here and make sure the chat is well behaved and moderated. Thank you a lot, chat mods.
And we've also had in the field, we've had Julia.
Yes, it was a wonderful launch and well worth the wait. And I want to thank our viewers for joining us for a third time to see this one successfully get off the pad.
Third time was the charm for ViaSat-3. There you go, ViaSat-3, third time. It all matches in the end. Also in the field, we've had Max, who's been on the manual track, bringing us some of those launch views live half an hour ago. In the background, we've also had Kevin pushing the buttons, making the photons flow, helping to bring this to you. Das also popped in and told me to look at the screen. And of course, I've been Brian Caton, your host for today's show, bringing you Falcon Heavy, the first fully expendable Falcon Heavy, excluding the fairings. Don't talk about the fairings, with ViaSat-3 Americas. So with that, let's wrap it up. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Goodbye.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight down to SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Décollage! Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.